This podcast was written and created by Avi Melamed, Middle East intelligence analyst and founder of the Inside the Middle East Institute.
When you hear Yemen, I think for most people the image that comes to mind is just chaos. A distant, really complicated conflict that's almost impossible to follow.
And that's exactly the perception we need to challenge today. Our mission here is to show that what's happening in Yemen isn't random at all.
Okay.
The sources we're looking at, especially the analysis from geopolitical expert Avi Melamed, frame it very differently. He calls it a slow, predictable unraveling.
A predictable unraveling. So we're going to drill past the headlines today and get into that deep structural reality. And we're starting with tribalism, which Avi Melamed says is the key.
It is. Let's just set the stage really quickly. You've got about 30 million people in Yemen. Most are Sunni, about 2/3, but there's a very powerful Shiite minority, about 1/3, mostly Zaidi, up in the north.
But that religious breakdown, that's just one layer, isn't it? The real story here is loyalty.
That's the tectonic plate, exactly. Avi Melamed's core insight is that Yemen is one of the most, if not the most, tribal societies in the Middle East. Hundreds of tribes.
And for them, loyalty to the tribe comes first, before, say, the country.
It fundamentally outweighs it. Loyalty to the tribe, to the clan. It consistently comes before any loyalty to a national state or to the central army.
So that leads to a really critical point that Avi Melamed makes, which is that Yemen isn't a state built from the top down.
No, it's a society built from the tribe up. And that has always limited the power of whatever government was sitting in the capital, Sana'a.
Even after unification in 1990.
Oh, absolutely. The state was always shallow. Its authority just didn't run that deep.
And then came the 2011 Arab Spring. The longtime ruler is gone, and that shallow structure just shatters. It creates this huge power vacuum.
Precisely. And that's when the Houthis make their move. In 2014, they seized the capital, Sana'a. And you have to understand, the Houthis are a movement that's deeply rooted in those northern tribal networks.
So it wasn't just a military victory?
Not at all. They understood how to dominate the existing local power structures. They just stepped into the vacuum the weak central government left behind.
And that Houthi takeover is what triggers the big regional intervention in 2015. Saudi Arabia and the UAE jump in to try and block the Houthis and, push back against Iran.
Right. But their strategies immediately split, even though they're supposed to be partners. It was a fatal fracture in the coalition from day one.
How so?
Well, the Saudis did what you'd expect. They focused on border security and trying to restore the central authority of the internationally recognized government, a classic top-down approach.
But if the whole problem is that the central government has no real power to begin with, that strategy seems flawed.
It was, and the UAE saw that. They recognized the structural reality that Avi Melamed talks about, so they focused their efforts completely differently.
On the south?
On the south. On local forces, ports, coastlines. Because they knew that the real power on the ground was held by local tribe-based groups, not the fragile government.
And the consequence of that split is the fragmentation we see now. The UAE backs southern factions. They form the Southern Transitional Council, or STC.
And by 2018, the SEC seizes Aden, which was meant to be the government's interim capital. So the conflict suddenly becomes this multi-sided war. It's not just two sides anymore.
And this is where Avi Melamed's forecast really comes into focus.
It's incredible. Already back in 2022, he was warning that Yemen was not heading for reunification. He said it was heading for severe fragmentation.
And he actually predicted what it would look like.
He did. In his book, Inside the Middle East, Entering a New Era, he laid it out. A Houthi-controlled north, a separate southern entity backed by the UAE, and then this marginalized Saudi-backed government just clinging to power in Aden.
So the big takeaway for you here is that what looks like endless random chaos in Yemen is actually the predictable result of this deep structural reality. The idea of a single unified state is slipping away because, at the end of the day, tribal loyalty was always stronger.
And that leaves you with a really important question to think about. If this deep-seated reality, this bottom-up tribal foundation fighting a top-down state made Yemen's fragmentation almost inevitable, what other nations in the Middle East might be struggling with that exact same structural conflict right now? Something to keep in mind.
This podcast is made possible by supporters like you. ITME is an independent, nonprofit institute committed to apolitical, intelligence-based Middle East education.
To learn more or to support our work, visit our website www.insidethemiddle-east.com.